We have a Category 1 Hurricane Oscar, which is located over the eastern Bahamas, nearing Cuba, and a weakening Nadine over Central America. I'm meteorologist Robert Spetta with First Coast News, and let's break down both of these storm systems. Now, first, I want to get out of the way the fact that neither of these are going to impact the southeastern United States directly. That includes the First Coast. Now, indirectly, we could be looking at some swells from them, but they are going to be staying down towards the south. So let's break down impacts from both of these and how they're going to be steered and what direction they're going to be going over the next several days. Now, first off, here's Hurricane Oscar as of 8 a.m. this morning. Winds currently are 80 miles per hour with that pressure down to 986 millibars. Remember, the lower the pressure, the stronger the storm. Key from the National Hurricane Center, that what is interesting with this storm, it is what you would almost call a microcane. The winds around that center of circulation, as far as hurricane strength are concerned, only extend just a few miles, 5 miles to be exact, away from that low-level center. So that's where you have the highest of the winds. But there is plenty of rainfall extending well out away from that center as this drifts off towards the west across the eastern Bahamas, nearing Cuba. Now, key thing about Cuba is the fact that majority of the island is without power this time, not associated with the tropical system, but on Friday they had a power grid failure that knocked out majority of the power for residents there, and now they're trying to get things back online, but they have to deal with an incoming hurricane. You're taking a look right now at the hurricane hunters, which are currently out there doing laps around the storm, and it looks like the latest are getting a pressure down to 984 millibars, so this could have strengthened just a bit over the last few hours. But I want to talk about the last 24 hours, where this came from nearly nothing to going up to a Category 1 storm, which is something we expected at the beginning of this hurricane season. We expected more than normal number of storms, but the key thing with the hurricane season outlook was the fact that there was going to be storms that could rapidly intensify because of the warm sea surface temperatures across the Atlantic and into the Gulf of Mexico. Some of the warmest we have seen on record since records began, at the very least, which provides more fuel. The way I like to kind of describe it when we're talking about these type of storm systems that rapidly intensify, like what we've seen with Helene, like what we've seen with Milton, now we've seen with this one. It may not be a Cat 5, but it went from nothing to a Cat 1 in a very short time. It's like if you have a small fire, just walk up and pour a gallon of gasoline on it and it just blows right up. That is these storm systems over these warm sea surface temperatures. It just allows them to quickly intensify. So taking a look at that satellite imagery, plenty of convection around the center as it moves over some of the islands here, heading towards eastern areas of Cuba. For our military friends, I know across Jacksonville we have a lot of friends out there in the military in Guantanamo Bay. They are actually that little kind of notch in the southeastern portion of that's where Gitmo is, and that's where you're still not going to see hurricane strength conditions there, but they could be looking at some of the side effects from this storm system that heads off into that direction. All right, so let's take a look at the forecast track. And once again, this is expected to drift west and then turn towards the north and head towards the north and east across the Bahamas. As it moves over eastern Cuba, though, it's going to slow, which means there's a lot of rainfall with this storm system. Of course, there is that threat of some storms. So there is that threat of hurricane strength winds knocking down trees and could cause additional problems as far as the infrastructure and power outages are concerned across that island. But also they're going to be looking at flooding rains, which could even provide landslides and that chance of some low-lying flooding as the mountains across eastern Cuba kind of rip this storm system apart and squeeze out that moisture. At this time, across parts of the Turks and Caicos, eastern areas of Bahamas, and northeastern areas of Cuba, there is a hurricane warning in place. Southeastern Cuba, including Guantanamo Bay, is under a tropical storm warning at this time. No warnings are in place across the mainland United States, including southern areas of Florida. And you take a look at that rainfall totals, over 8 inches, very likely across eastern Cuba, but some localized spots could see as much as 15 to 16 inches of total rainfall before this shifts towards the north and heads off towards the eastern Bahamas. Most of this will stay east of places like Nassau, but still, you're going to be looking at plenty of impacts there across the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos as well, and maybe in western areas of Hispaniola. So yeah, rain being the main issue. Now, why is it turning towards the north and northeast? High pressure. Remember that. High pressure is our friend when you're talking about tropical systems. Tropical systems will not flow uphill. They're basically like water. Imagine actually more like a boat within a river. I think that's the best way. The boat's always going to flow downstream towards areas of lower pressure. So we have the stationary boundary, which is part of a lower pressure area. Well, high pressure is across much of the southeastern United States. So as long as that boundary sits towards our south and east, high pressure is over the southeast, that is going to allow the storm system to turn and kick off towards north and east, not flowing uphill towards the top of a mountain. Rivers won't do that. A boat will not flow uphill, so neither will these tropical systems. I know that's a kind of a metaphor here, but hopefully that describes it. Plus, at the same time, you look at the upper level winds, this is going to start to see an increase in shear as the jet stream dips down across Florida. And you can see the upper level winds flowing from north to south across Florida. That is also going to help push the storm system along, and a reason why we are confident of that sharp northeasterly turn. So I know a lot of people are curious. Across the state of Florida, we're still recovering from 2 back-to-back powerful hurricanes out here. Do not need another one, and thankfully this is going to turn towards the north, but unfortunately it is still having some major impacts for our friends across Cuba and into parts of the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos. So that high pressure ridge going to be dominating, allowing this to stay well towards the south. But there still is that interaction between that high and the stationary boundary, bringing onshore winds, thus creating rough surf, areas of coastal rainfall, and high risk of rip currents all along the east coast of Florida throughout the upcoming week. So if you're heading out to the beaches here, it's definitely not going to be pleasant by any means. Meanwhile, tropical depression Nadine made landfall here on Saturday across Belize, still bringing heavy rainfall there, but it did quickly weaken out as expected across Guatemala, extending over towards southern areas of Mexico. Because of that friction and lack of, well, moisture, this is just getting ripped apart and weakening. But there is the potential, a possibility of this heading out towards the eastern Pacific and actually re-intensifying as it heads out to those warmer waters just offshore and then goes out to sea. But for now, still a big rainmaker for our friends across Central America, where you see here additional 5 to 10 inches still possible in some of the higher elevations across southern Mexico. So some big impacts with that storm system as well. The 2024 Atlantic season still, though, ongoing until the end of November. So we still could see more storms. I've seen some people in some of our comments on our Facebook page saying, you guys said that Nadine wasn't going to form, and that was over a week ago. But here's the deal. We still have another month of hurricane season. A week ago, we said that there wasn't likely going to be another immediate storm that would not be impacting Florida, and we still stick by that. No impacts on Florida, but to say that there's not going to be any more storm systems is highly, highly unlikely. We're probably going to get a couple more here, with Patty being the next name. And once again, hurricane season peaked on September 10th, but it still goes all the way to the end of November. So, of course, we're going to keep you posted on tropics out here across the Atlantic and into the Gulf of Mexico. On First Coast News, make sure you check out our Hurricane Central. Check out firstcoastnews.com. I'm meteorologist Robert Spetta.